Actually, I had a question about adding anything to the soil. I'm going to come to that in just a little bit for the square foot garden, but I neglected when we were talking about the EarthBox, which is this over here, is that when it comes time to replant, you're going to take the cover off, you're going to pull all those plants out of there, and then I would remove about this much soil from the top of the box. The part that has the fertilizer in it, scrape that all out and discard it. And then you can get a replanting kit. So this replanting kit has 2 more shower caps in it. It has the bag of fertilizer and the dolomite or the lime that you can then just fill it back up again, just top it off with fresh potting mix and just start all over again. Or if you want to come up with your own kind of fertilizer, if you'd rather use an organic fertilizer, you buy that separately. Use 2 cups of fertilizer, 1 cup of lime, and go back and redo it. But you don't have to take all the soil out and put a potting mix out and put a new bag of potting mix in every time. The thing about fertilizers is that inorganic fertilizers are made of chemicals, and they're called salts. Now that's not table salt, but they're called salts. And unless you get a good rain that can wash them from the top down and drench the soil and flush them out the bottom, they build up over time. And that eventually will shut off your plant growth. So you do need to get rid of that. One thing that some people do is that they'll take a nylon hose, a nylon stocking, and fill it with the fertilizer and lay it in that trench in the top of the box. And then they'll just simply pick that up, throw that away, and keep all of their soil right there to reuse. And so you can do it that way also. Okay, back to the square foot gardening now. You're only 6 inches deep. One thing that the author, Mel Bartholomew, found out when he talked to horticulturists is that vegetables, for the most part, their roots don't go deeper than 6 inches anyway. Now I know potatoes will, and if you have large carrots, yes, they're going to. So they don't work as well in this kind of a system unless you would build a higher box in one of these sections. We don't have the sections shown here yet, and I've omitted that for a reason, and I'm going to be getting that in just a little bit. But when we take a look at this, about how many different kinds of plants or different crops would you say you could plant in here all at the same time? Any idea when you look at a box no bigger than this? You think you could plant at least 4 different kinds in there? 8, 10, 12? Actually, it's 16. Now, how do you know it's 16? Well, that's partly why you need the grid. Now, if you buy one of these, by the way, we have these made up in kits. We have them in vinyl and we have them in wood. And so you can buy them either way. They are on a pallet right back here and they're priced. They come with directions and screws and everything that you need. All you need is a screwdriver to put them together. You can put them together in about 20 minutes. They also come with a 4x4 layer of ground cloth or weed cloth. If you're going to set this down on top of existing grass, I would mow it short, put down a heavy layer of newspaper. By heavy, I mean no less than 10 sheets of newspaper thick. Or you could use corrugated cardboard and then put this on top of it. And then put your box on top and fill it with your, we call it Mel's Mix because named after the author who invented it. So put your Mel's Mix on top of that, and then you should be weed free. Okay? It doesn't have a bottom, so if you get a heavy rain or if you try to overwater, it'll just simply, the soil will hold as much as it can and the rest of it will just release. It'll run out the bottom and right across that poor soil that's underneath. You don't have to worry about it. Just don't place it in a low area that's going to flood. You don't want it sitting in water for any amount of time. But it can be on any other kind of soil and it will simply release the extra water right out of the bottom. Okay? Okay, this is a weed preventer cloth that you put under the box. Put your under. Put your heavy newspaper down on top of the ground. Let's say this is your soil. Here's your soil. Put a layer of newspaper on there, very thick. If you have grass, if you have bare dirt, you don't need to do that. Or a layer of cardboard. Roll this out. And then take your box and just set it right on top. Then you either buy or mix your soil, fill the box completely full, and then you place your grid on top of it. So I'm going to take just a second, I'm going to walk over here and I'm going to pull the grid off of this box because it's already assembled and we'll put it up here so you can see what I'm talking about. This also comes in the kit. You just simply snap it together. And now when you look at this box, and if I were to ask you, how many different crops could you put in this box, you'd all say the same thing, 16. And there'd be no rows. You can reach into the center. From the other side, you'd reach this way. If you were to lay this flat and put it up against a wall, a fence or something, then you'd want it only 2 feet this way, only 2 feet wide, because you can only reach that far. You don't want to be walking on this precious soil that you're going to be putting in there. So this will keep you from reverting back to planting things in rows. You can't really put a row in there very well. It's going to keep you from walking on it. And it's also going to help you with your spacing. Now, you never need to fertilize with this soil mix. You never need to get a soil test. And you're going to pull very few weeds. I think last summer I maybe had 10 weeds in my box of this size. And because the soil mix is so loose, and by the way, this is what is in those bags. This is the soil mix that's already mixed. You can just pass that around and get your fingers into it. The soil is very loose, and so if you want to pull a weed, you just grab it and shake it a little bit, and it'll pull right out. Roots and all will come right out, and you can get rid of it. In the EarthBox, you'll never have any weeds because that's completely covered. All right? Now, you've got the perfect mix to start with. You've got a lot of good, high-quality compost in there, but that gets used up by the plants that are growing in it. Therefore, every time you pull out all the plants in a particular 12-inch space, add more compost. Remember I said you're going to need some of this compost blend, whether you buy the premix or not. You're going to need some of that blended compost. Take a spade, take 1 scoop of your blended compost, put it into that square, mix it in, and then you plant. Every time you plant. That way you never have to add fertilizer. The compost is fertilizer. It's actually a very low-grade fertilizer. You know, every time you buy a bag of fertilizer, there's always 3 numbers on it. Those are your NPK numbers: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So it'll say something like 8, 5, 10, or 5, 10, 10, or 10, 10, 10. First one's always nitrogen, the second one phosphorus, and the third one potassium. Compost is typically 0.5, 0.2, 0.5. See, real low. So you're not going to put your plants in there and then jump back as they grow up, because it's going to take them some time. They're going to sit there for a while. They won't die. You keep it watered, and then finally they'll take off. Let me tell you a little experiment that I did with my broccoli last fall. I took 2 broccoli plants. I put one in one square in the back and one in the front, and they just sort of sat there and looked at me. And I did it in October, and I just waited and waited, and they just slowly were growing. I got impatient. I took some 10-10-10 fertilizer, and I threw it on a one, but not the other. Well, the one took right off, and it grew up. You know what? Remember that story of the rabbit and the hare? Well, the rabbit, the one with the fertilizer, that one took off, started making broccoli, and the other one just slowly came along. By the end of the time, the one with the fertilizer had pretty well exhausted itself. It was kind of open and kind of leggy. The other one was a much darker green and just kept on putting out little broccolis, just kept on, and it's still in my garden. I can still go and snap them off and eat them raw if I want to. Now, they're not staying very tight. They're opening up. A few of the flowerlets are starting to turn yellow, but that is still there. The other one I pulled out months ago, and I think it just simply sort of wore itself out from having the fertilizer. Just be patient. This system will work. Your plants may not get huge. You don't want huge plants. You don't have much space. Remember, this is limited space gardening, so you want them to